Welcome to This Week in No Code. I'm your host, JJ Englert, here with my co-host, David Pal. David, how are you doing this week?
I am doing very well. Nice to see everyone here on the Pacific time this day. We haven't ever had
Yeah.
that before.
Yes, I am currently in Los Angeles, Orange County, visiting California for 3 weeks on an extended vacation. You made it look so good, David. I wanted to come see what it was all about.
You know, this photo right here isn't actually Los Angeles. That's Italy. We should go
Okay.
there next. Let's go there.
We actually went there for our honeymoon. It is a wonderful place. I love Italy. But thank you for tuning into This Week in No Code. We have another fantastic show for you today. We have a full slate of news, and then we're going to be bringing on one of the greatest no-code devs we know back, who has a phenomenal story as an entrepreneur, teaching himself no code, and now working professionally as a no-code developer. And then that will segue into tips about working professionally as a no-code dev, working with teams, all that kind of stuff. So before we get into the interview, though, let's take it over to David for the no-code news of the week.
Well, good morning, everybody. Lots of news to talk about. Of course, the first thing we're going to talk about today is TikTok and Adobe joining forces, little generative AI combo, 1-2 punch, really bringing some great tools into the Adobe Express toolkit. We know that TikTok is all about AI. They want to bring AI into the creator's process. They want to make it easier for people to make great content that's engaging and addicting and scrollable and continuing and over and over and over. And now the partnership between Adobe and TikTok has made maybe a little bit more professional sense to allow more people to post directly to TikTok, to use some of TikTok's built-in AI capabilities, and to be able to use Adobe and spread all of your TikTok content elsewhere as well. So it's really exciting to see how these partners are working together. It's interesting. Adobe likes to be professional. For some reason, I look at TikTok and the content there, not always as the most professional. So we'll see how those two things blend. Maybe TikTok will become a bit more professional ad side. I'm not exactly sure, but you get a whole suite of Adobe products now when you get to work in this world, including some of their stock video, their clips. And yeah, it's going to be a great time saver for
It
me.
makes a lot of sense. I mean, and whether you like it or not, me as a traditional filmmaker, TikTok is creating a whole new way of media, a new kind of media, right? And Adobe has not traditionally catered to those folks, but those folks are a huge market now, and they are growing rapidly. And it's almost symbolizing a new way of just creating media in general, right? And quite frankly, Adobe's late to the game here. TikTok has many other, like CapCut and many other things that millions of creators use to create these videos, and Adobe's just been on the sidelines kind of waiting. But I think they just see it's a too big of a market to be outside of. And so even though they started as like a really professional tool, I think they're now finding ways to make it easier and easier to allow anybody to use their software to get going. And I think that's why we see Adobe using, kind of following the Descript method, which is allowing you to transcribe your videos in an edit via text and do all these really like consumer focused editing ways to allow essentially the masses to use their professional products. So I think there's another story of a company starting at the top of the most complex, the most advanced things, and then going down and just saying, okay, how do we make it easier, 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 easier? And I think we've seen a lot of like the powerhouse companies doing that these days, of just
Mhm.
how easy can we make this tool, but also how powerful can we keep it? And I think that's what Adobe's doing here. And I mean, the market, the size, the opportunity, it makes a lot of sense. So I
Yeah.
see it. I think they're late to the game, but I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
Let's
move on.
head on over to Antithesis. Is that how we say it?
Antithesis.
Antithesis raises $47 million to automate software testing. This company just came out of stealth mode, and they have just raised $47 million in a seed funding round. So a little bit of background of the founders. They were founded by the team behind Foundation DB, which was acquired by Apple in 2015, and they returned here to create the best software testing tools. And this isn't just testing, it also produces, when it finds a bug, it will produce, how to reproduce that bug, and then provides debugging information. So it's you build code, you build no code, you scan it for bugs, it reproduces them, it shows you where they are, shows you how to debug it. which would be amazing if it would work. But I have yet to come across a solution that actually works. And there are a lot of solutions. So the market is huge for something like this. Tons of software being created. We spend a lot of time on QA, bug patches, all that kind of stuff. So if you can have a good approach that doesn't just slow you down so much. Like one of the things that I've always hated with this kind of stuff in no code is you could build so fast in no code. And by the time it takes you to actually build a software
Mhm.
testing tool, like you could have built the whole feature, right? And so it takes you 4 hours to build the feature and 4 hours to build the automated testing for that feature. And then all of a sudden you're 100% bloated. And so I'm interested to see the quality of something like this and if it could actually be like quick enough to actually start implemented into your builds. And if not, maybe it's just not meant for this kind of, builds where you build so fast, more for that enterprise of like, hey, we have this one feature up and running. We're willing to dedicate 3 days of building this automated test for it because it's not changing much, that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see the route they're taking. What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I mean, I think now with AI, a new software testing platform with AI first has a new opportunity. We've seen that AI can be taught to use platforms, which
Yep.
means that, these models can, these platforms that this antithesis has created can probably use software that you create pretty naturally and with all of the different variants that you might come across, right? And I think testing software, when we think about how we test our bugs, we do kind of the same process over and over and over again. And so being able to automate that would be fantastic. We've seen tools like pre-flight, not pre-flight, maybe pre-flight. There was something that came out that was like bubble
There's a lot of
or
tools.
bubble first. Like,
I've tried a handful. I haven't really been able to adopt any of them.
yeah, a lot of them were like recording your clicks, and then you could replay that sequence of quick clicks over and over and over again. And whenever you push something, it would run and go, "Oh, this has an unexpected result now." And
Mhm.
so I think that is a great way to approach it. But if I don't have to go through and click every single time, and if I could understand the code change to see what should have changed and not say, oh, this flow broke. Well, of course, I
Mhm.
moved the button, right? But if the platform can understand that the button has been moved and that's where you click now instead, that would be really helpful. But software
Yeah.
testing sucks. And, if we want to move to the first one person $1 billion company, we're going to need automation everywhere.
Well said. Well said. What's going on with NVIDIA? They enter the chat game this week, which is a weird thing with Sam Altman saying he wants to enter the chip game, but now NVIDIA wants to enter the chat game. So what's going on there, David?
Yeah. So NVIDIA enters the chat. They are, they're basically showing that, hey, we know how to build software too, right? We've built hardware for a long time. We know how this works. We know why you're using these tools. They have built basically a native RAG, retrieval augmented generation system, to
Okay.
let you chat with your documents, with your content, lots of different file formats like text, PDF, doc, XML, even some YouTube videos and playlists. You can ask for a lot of information. They're trying to show that they got some developers on their team and not just hardware expertise. So I don't know. This feels kind of just like news for news sake. If you look
Hmm.
through the NVIDIA blog, they've shown so many examples of all of the things you can do over time. Like lots of things that seem new right now are actually things they've done in the past, not in a consumer way, but just as a proof of concept kind of thing. I'm surprised that this is making headlines, but they're just trying to get more people to use their hardware. So building it natively gets adoption.
Yeah. I mean, you got to imagine they see what Sam Altman is doing and said, hey, if I need $7 trillion to build a new chip company, and then NVIDIA is like, you know what? I already got a chip company. If he's going to start coming after chips and software, let's go after software and we're ready. It, that's probably not how it's going. They probably already had this in their long-term plan, et cetera. But they have a great opportunity here. I mean, you got to be bullish on NVIDIA with where the things are going. Like I continue to see a lot of ability there for their future growth. So I think that's exciting. Let's do one more conversational point before we bring back on. And this one is the AI corrected Super Bowl performance. And if you haven't heard of it yet, this is kind of crazy. So Alicia Keys reportedly hit a sour note during her opening appearance at the Super Bowl halftime, which was widely noticed by viewers. So, to make matters worse, the NFL's official YouTube page has altered the audio on the performance to remove the sour notes, while bootleg clips with the original audio are being rapidly removed from YouTube. So then this is kind of creating concerns of, future disputes over authenticity of Keith's performance due to conflicting memories and just altering memories and what actually happening and stuff like this, and just creating these broader implications. I thought it was really interesting. What do you think, David?
I think it's cool, but it makes you think like, would the nip slip have ever happened? Right? Like you look back and you're like, wow, they would have just cut that. Like that would just never have happened. They would have AI over that. And I
Over
think
that,
there's
yeah.
so much that people will want their the their life to be even more pristine. Right? Like
Hmm.
Facebook is already auto touched and everyone's uploading the most beautiful version of themselves. And now if everything even recorded live is being changed, like we're going to start pushing people even further into this world of perfection. I have to be perfect all the time, no matter what, not even in the stage photos, but in the live photos. I
Yeah.
think that's a little problem. There's also like seeing is believing. Not anymore. Right now we're
Yeah.
showing the recorded, like the saved version has been edited. But what happens when the tech gets so good that nobody outside of the stadium will have known she hit a sour note? When in the
Right.
live broadcast, it's actually stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think this you make a lot of good points, first of all, but second of all, like the ethics behind all of this, the ramification, the consequences, the messages that we're saying to our youth of like perfection only kind of thing. Yeah,
mhm.
it's really interesting. Actually, one of our future shows, we're going to be bringing on someone that specializes in ethics behind AI to talk more about like what is all these advancements actually doing for our world, our citizens, our ethics behind everything, and where do we see this going with all of these new advancements. So I'm excited to talk about that some more. But without any further ado, let's bring Beck to the show and let's get his story going, learning more about how he has become such an excellent no code dev himself. So Beck, welcome to This Week in No Code.
Welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you
Always a
got it.
pleasure, Beck. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So tell us your story, because you are honestly like a traditional no coder where you just come from all walks of life and just teach yourself. And now here you are building awesome things as a professional no coder, which is, I think, how most of us got here. But what was your side of this?
Yeah. So I guess, long story short, like when COVID started, I was getting out of the military, and then my plan was to get my MBA and just go through that corporate route, right? So I did that. I started my MBA at Georgetown, and that's 2020. And while I was going through my MBA, like I've always had an entrepreneurial like mindset, I guess. And a couple of my cohort members, we decided to build a startup to solve a problem that I was experiencing the year prior when I was getting married. The startup was called Bellevin, and the app was basically like a marketplace, kind of like Upwork for hiring wedding vendors.
Oh,
And I was like, I wish I had this, because the one thing that I was trying to solve was my only job planning our wedding was to hire a photographer. My wife did everything else, and I hated doing that too. Like all the venue and all the catering and all that stuff, she did all that. But even just the job of finding a photographer was just so like, I just felt so stupid doing it, because I'm sitting there looking at the major website like the Nod, and I have to look through a list of photographers, look at their pictures, message them, hope they message me back, see if they're available. And I was like, this sucks. Like I just want somebody to show up, ideally like two photographers, take some pictures, and then email me the pictures when they're done. Like I really don't care about your style. Like I don't know
no,
how you can
and,
screw that
and
up.
you
And
probably couldn't even tell looking at the portfolios. You're probably like, this looks just like all of the other photos I've seen. How can I
exactly.
tell the difference? I don't know.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, I'm just at this point price shopping, right?
Yeah.
And the major player, the Nod, doesn't tell you their availability. So you literally have to message each one and say, hey, are you available on this date? If so, what's your rate for this day, right? Because everybody has a different rate for the day that they're working, right? So long story short, I was like, man, this sucks. So I've always had that issue in the back of my mind. And when I was talking to my cohort members, like, oh, this is a great idea. Let's build it. And then we're like, all right, let's build it. And then we realized none of us know how to develop anything. Like we're just sitting there like, all right, so who's going to actually build it? Like
How's
there's
it
three
gonna work?
dudes who are all business guys. How are we going to build this? So decided to try to learn Python and JavaScript. I was going down that rabbit hole, and I was like, I don't have time for this. And ultimately, we discovered NoCode, and I was playing around with Bubble. And found JJ, found Gregory. There was like a lot of the OG guys that I found on YouTube and ladies. And I just started watching videos and I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. And I started building it and quickly realized I enjoyed doing it. And my last year, my MBA program, I like debated dropping out because I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I see no reason to finish this program because I don't want to be a consultant because that's 95% of people get an MBA. Yeah.
MBA,
but I ended up finishing it because my wife was like, you're already in this deep, just finish it. So it was just funny because like after an MBA, you go through the job search process, and I was like, I don't want to be a consultant. Like, I don't email me, I'm good. Like I just wanted to get the degree. So long story short, that's what introduced me to NoCode, just trying to solve a problem that I experienced. And then thanks to JJ's Slack channel, I got the job that I'm in currently. There was posting on there, and I was like, all right, this sounds cool. And now I work for Matt Mashari, building software for him, and awesome experience. Like, love working there, and it really gets me to like try out new stuff in the NoCode space and like connected with current stuff like AI to see like where we could push it. So I get a lot of time to just mess around and build really cool stuff. And
what happened to the wedding platform?
Dude, we tried raising our pre-seed in 2022, I think, early 2022, and we had a couple of investors who were interested. We had like I think it was called a roll-up vehicle, a RUV, and we were trying to raise, I think it was like $3 million. And if I remember correctly,
why so much money? You built it yourself. Like, what'd you need all this money for?
Well, like, pay our own salary. It really was that, because it was the three of us, and we're like, all right, for us to actually do this seriously, we would need to quit our jobs, because at the time I was working in sales, and we need some runway. So, and it was also like the time where like
money was free,
venture money was just flowing. Yeah, everybody was handing out like seed and pre-seed checks, and it was like, all right, this sounds like a good number, $3 million. Why not do that? And I think we got like $500K in quote unquote commitments. Like people said they would like join the RUV, like and then we just couldn't find a lead investor to actually like run the rest of it. And then it really felt like a job.
Did you end up taking any of that 500?
No, we just canceled it because it really felt like a job application where I'm just sitting there like talking to these VCs, and a lot of them just don't even care. They're just like, okay, cool, yep, thanks, bye. And I'm just like, I don't want to keep doing this. Like, I'm tired of pitching you my deck. Like, I'm just telling you, we already have the platform ready. It's three of us. We just need money to do this full time. And after that, we just gave up on it.
Like, I know it's sad that you weren't able to raise that money, but like that might have been a blessing in disguise.
Oh, it was.
Like actually taking that much money and not like fully being ready for that, or like fully knowing how to leverage that money. And then also if it didn't work, like being on the hook for that, like I did that, right? I raised money and I took that money and it ended up not working. That was like one of my biggest professional regrets, is that I learned on someone else's money dime like that, right?
Yeah.
And so you, in this sense, you went through the process, you learned, but you didn't end up taking the money, and then it didn't end up working out, which is unfortunate. I thought it was a great product, but I think it just I don't know. There was a lot of things, and maybe it just you weren't quite ready for that at the moment. Like maybe now you would be, but it might have been a blessing in disguise.
Oh, absolutely, it was 100% blessing in disguise because I got to like play startup, right? Like I got to play the whole stuff, like building a product, try. Right. And actually, let me take back. We did get like $20,000, I think, in the grand scheme of things, of like free money outside of the RUV that we were able to use for. We went to a couple of venues or like wedding expos and like had a booth and stuff, and that was kind of awkward. Like three dudes trying to be at a wedding venue, like a expo, and we're trying to like sell brides on stuff. It just felt really funny. Yeah, but it learned a lot, right? I learned a lot about pitching, building a product, trying to get traction, because I think most early people get into Bubble are trying to build a dual-sided marketplace. Like I think that is the most common app to build. Is like, oh, I see an inefficiency in the market. I'm going to build a dual-sided marketplace. Everybody will love it, and then you quickly realize it's the chicken or the egg problem. We're like, no one's going to join that platform until there's scale, like, until both sides are there. Yeah,
and that chicken and egg problem is a real problem. It's the real deal. Yeah, your platform was awesome. You also taught yourself Bubble while building that platform, right?
Yeah. That's I went down the wrong. I won't say the wrong. I made mistakes in rebuilding the platform 3 times because I first built it once
Well, yeah,
and I realized
That's what
yeah,
happens when
that's
you
what we
learn,
tell
though.
everyone.
That's how
When
it
it, when
goes.
it
yeah,
Yeah.
it's great building a platform 3 times with nobody. Like you're sitting there like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, they will love this pop
Yeah,
up.
but it's just part of the learning curve, though. Like
Yeah.
the first time you build it, it's like, oh, I think I know actually now, but now I need to go fix all the things that I've learned
Yeah.
along the way, and then
Exactly.
you just
Yeah,
do
and
that a
when you
couple
have no
times.
users,
Yeah,
it's easier just to start over than to try to figure out how to do it properly with what you've built. When I was
Yep.
teaching
Absolutely.
JJ, I don't know if you did the same thing. Most people would want to start a boot camp because they had something they want to build, right? They're like, hey, I want to build this app. Can you teach me? Right. And I
100%.
would always tell them, go find something else to build first because you're going to have to redo it. Like, don't build the thing you want to
Yeah.
have at the end because you're going to make so many mistakes that you're going to throw it away and get
Oh,
discouraged. Start with another idea. Like, pick something else. It's almost a bad way to try to learn, like, just for the sake of learning, right? Going to college with no hope of what you want to do is tough because you're like not really excited to do the work. You don't know why you're doing the work. And there's always a trough of disillusionment. There's always that moment when you're like, maybe this is just too hard. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. I'm never going to get it. And if you don't have the prize at the end, you just fall off. And so
Yeah. There's no carrot,
you
right?
have
Like
to, you
if
have
there's
to.
no reason why you're doing it. You're like, oh, this would be a cool. I don't really know a lot of people that would do something just to say that it's a cool skill for them to have, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you're gonna dedicate coding, really, because like at the end of the day, like sure, Bubble's a no-code platform, but you really have to understand concepts around database structure, performance, and all that stuff. If you're gonna dedicate your time to learn that, you have to have a reason why you're doing it, right? You have to have a business idea that you want to launch, or
it's
maybe you
either a
want to get
business
freelance
idea
or
or you
whatever.
just want to make money from it. Like it's either
Yeah.
like
That's
you
the
need
job
some
you want.
value back. Yeah, that's like you're doing this to either make money or to build an idea or to that's it really. Especially
Yeah.
with Bubble because it takes so long to learn. Like with some of these other tools like Softer, you can build something in 3 hours and like it's cool, and then you can figure out if you want to do anything. But with Bubble, like you need to actually build something and then to rebuild it, and so like you really need that determination.
Well, it's not like learning an instrument. Like you're never going to roll up to a campfire with a laptop and build a bubble. Like with a guitar, like you just go and start strumming along and everyone loves it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not a bubble analogy.
No.
Like, oh great, yeah, watch me guys.
Eh.
Like, no, that's not it.
Well, Bubble kind of sets you up for failure in that they advertise as if it's like a citizen development platform that anybody can jump into and you can instantly build your app, right? Like build your MVP. Yeah, you can, but like it's not going to be what you think it will be.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you still need to really grasp the platform to be able to build something worthwhile.
Yeah.
If not, it's just going to be just like at the end of the day, it's going to be trash. It's not going to work right.
Yeah, I think I think that's a problem right now with just no code tools generally, especially the higher end ones that are going for power, is also ease of use. Like they want to keep the market open for them so they can have a bigger audience, right? Bubble started off as just being like a fully customized thing, right? And it's a harder thing because of such. And because they don't have those for you, you need to learn design. You need to learn database. You need to learn workflows and logic and APIs, like all this kind of stuff, right? And so it takes a while to get there. And yes, you can build, and yes, you can build anything quite quickly once you know how, but it takes you a while to get,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then doing it professionally, transitioning into what you're doing now, Beck, doing it professionally is like a whole other project.
It is, yeah.
So
yeah. What was
yeah.
that like
yeah.
joining a professional team? Sorry.
It was weird. Like honestly, it was really weird because I've always before I joined Mashari Method, I freelanced for a little bit. So like I quit my day job in sales and I just started getting freelancing projects on the side. A lot of it was my MBA program where like one of my clients was an enterprise consulting company that needed some random apps built for testing, right? Like they just wanted to be able to test some type of product to see if it to validate the market, right? And that was cool. And like I was getting a good amount of money. Like obviously it was worthwhile for me to quit my job and do that. But it was me working by myself, right? Like it was just me in the editor. I do whatever I want. I named stuff however I wanted to name it. I did it like it was just my show, right? It was a big show.
Yeah.
And then when I joined Mashari Method, there was a total of 4 Bubble developers I hired at the same time, and part of that was a testing mechanism where right from the beginning, before anybody was even hired, like at the end of the interview process, the person who was managing that team was like, hey, listen, we're going to hire 4 people and we're going to keep 3 of you, right? Like, so the 4th person, we're just going to find whoever that is, doesn't, like, all of you guys are superstars. You made the top 4 list, but we only have room for 3. So if you want to proceed with this position, just know that one of you will be let go in 3 months.
Already,
like,
right off the bat.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's like, and I have a kid and like a wife, and I'm like the sole breadwinner. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. So I was like, all right. So then I have to really bust my ass. Like,
I tried to hire you before that job.
Yeah. I remember.
I tried to hire you and bring you with me to my other company, and you're like, no, I got to go to this company. Honestly, it worked out for you. It was a good decision, but that's a lot of balls in the beginning, because I had given you an offer too, and then you're like, no, I'm going to take this one, even though I might be the 4th out. And that, okay.
Dude, I was thinking the same thing. Like, because by the time I told you, hey, I was going to go with this, they hadn't told me that yet. So then, so I told you, hey, I was going to go with this because I was like interview 3 or something like that. So I was like, all right, I feel pretty confident with this. And then when they said that, I was like, shoot, like it's like a bird in hand kind of situation where like, but at the same time, it put me in a position where I really had to show my worth.
But you always do it naturally. Like,
sure.
You were in the Army, like, sorry, is it Marines?
Yeah. Air Force.
Okay.
It's just a different uniform. Well, actually, I say that now, but all the other branches probably laugh at the Air Force for everything.
Yeah, they call them the Chair Force, but I like the Air Force the most out of my friends are in the Army and some others, so I know some of the jokes between each other branches.
Yeah. The biggest running joke is that like the Air Force stays in hotels while the Army stays in the woods, which is obviously true. Like, I've never had to go like camping in the woods, play Army. Like every time I had to go travel for work, it's like, hey, am I going to the Marriott or the Hilton? Like, which one am I staying at? So.
Not to bring us on too big of a tangent, but my best friend who was in the Army was preparing for deployment, and he was doing a drill in the woods, and a lightning storm came in, and he ended up getting struck by lightning during that. Wow. And his heart stopped, and they were luckily able to bring it. It ended up going like 3 times fast, and they had to stop his heart and then bring it back on rhythm.
Wow.
Which is but luckily he's okay now. But yeah. All right.
That's why I joined the Air Force. I was like, I'm good. I don't want to go in the woods. But like, I had my fair share of deployments, and there was one time where I was like, wait, I thought I was in the Air Force. Like, this isn't what I signed up for. But it's funny though, because like going back to the work side, like it was interesting and definitely challenging to prove your worth. But it was also interesting working with 3 other developers and figuring out like how we work together, right? And
with those systems in place yet either, right?
Yeah, we didn't have any system.
All 3 of you are like, we have to agree on a new system.
Yeah.
And
with Bubble,
really
like that kind of stuff, there were all really no systems. Like we're still figuring out how to work with teams and do it all professionally, no code and all that kind of stuff. So there's not even really a system that you can latch to. So what did you guys do?
Yeah, is there one or two things that really helped stick it together?
Yeah, well, this was also before Bubbles. Was it the branch management?
The version
control.
Version control. Yeah. So we had only the dev side and main, right? Like that's all we had. We didn't have the side branches and all that stuff. So it was really interesting. Like,
wow,
how to work that way. And us being a total of 4, we decided we were going to work on 2 different apps. Like we had multiple different ideas we wanted to test out in the company. So we split up teams into 2 just to be able to offset like 4 people working one editor, right? And ultimately, like putting systems in place, we quickly realized like a lot of us had different experiences in Bubble, and some people were better in one thing versus the other, right? So we leaned on each person's expertise to like set the standard of like how are we going to do things, right? Like one person was really good about privacy rules, so like we followed their lead on that, and then the other person was more design, so we relied on each other. But we really had to spend like say weeks setting up like an internal process of this, right? Like something as simple as that, right? Don't ever just leave a group that has the title of XXXJJKLMNOP, right? Like, no, like put a good name nomenclature to it. Document all your workflows, right? Like that was really challenging to me because I would just build a workflow and move on. But then we decided that every single page would have another page in Notion. A comment system sucks, and we have to document why this workflow does this, right? Like why do we choose this operation? And it really slowed us down, but it made it easy for us to be able to jump in and edit something broke.
Yeah.
But it definitely slowed us down.
Yeah. So why were you guys exploring 2 different things? Give us a little bit of background about the company, because I think that's very valuable as well.
Yeah, so Mashari Method is a executive coaching company specifically for startup CEOs and board members,
And he's like a
executives.
legend.
We also have
he has a book.
yeah. Mashari is that guy that
He wrote the book.
is always interviewed with like music
Yeah, Rick
stars. Like,
Rubin.
he has a huge beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the Rick Rubin of startup CEOs for sure.
That's exactly who he is. Yeah, like the same personality. He's just chilling. He lives out in Hawaii, and I go visit him like every once in a while. And every time I go out there, like I don't wear shoes because he's like, Beck, we're not wearing shoes today. And like we'll go into a restaurant, just like walk around barefoot. Like you never know, like if you see the guy, that he is like the whisperer where he talks to like Brian Armstrong, Coinbase on a weekly basis and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like you just see him, he's just some dude walking around barefoot in Hawaii, right? So
but it's
the same
him doing that in like Kansas. Like if he walked around barefoot in like Omaha at the steakhouse, that would be weirder than in Hawaii.
Yeah. I think he's out in Hawaii for that specific reason. He just lives that lifestyle, right? And like, he embraces I'll ping him like, hey, you want to chat today? He's like, I'm gonna go surfing in the next 30 minutes, so you're gonna have to wait for me till I get back, right? Like it's like he just loves being able to wants to do it.
But then that he's able to get there, it's because he's really good at what he does, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And he holds you to that standard, right? It's like, listen, have fun, do what you need to do on your time, but at the end of the day, if you tell me you're going to do something, do it, and do it on that time, right? Like, or I'm not going to believe you, right? So it's a lot of accountability to that.
Yeah.
But regarding his company, now we have, I want to say like 6 coaches within the company, and that's primarily our revenue generation is coaching. And then we have a software arm that's now just me on the NoCode side. And then we have a custom code side that has 3 people, I think, 3 developers and a designer.
So you
and we're building the same
started
thing.
full NoCode, and then you went one NoCode and code.
Actually, no, we started full code. That wasn't moving as fast as Matt wanted it to move.
Okay.
And so then he actually first brought on a NoCode agency.
Okay.
That still wasn't as reliable or as fast as he wanted it to be.
Okay.
So then ultimately he decided to hire full-time Bubble developers. And so now we have a custom code team and me building the same product in different variations, obviously, but just seeing like what we can learn from each other and see which one works best performance-wise. And it's really cool though, right? Like I get to like really prove that NoCode works
and
when
stands up
we have exactly.
Well, also you're by yourself, and there was 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you guys literally building the same product, or is it just they're building the back end, you're building the front end kind of thing?
No, it's 2 completely different products, same solution, just different approaches to that same solution. So what we're trying to build is a company management software that does a lot of stuff that you see with Asana or Workday, managing your actions, your meetings, and all that stuff, but just in a more opinionated way that Matt coaches. So basically taking his coaching methodology and managing teams and bringing that into software. So we're building that. Obviously, the 2 platforms have very different flavors. We have the UI and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's the same methodology.
Yeah. And that's great because he has a bunch of customers, all of the coaching customers.
Exactly.
Say, okay, great. Now you can use this tool.
Exactly. Yep. It's all organic clients. That's the cool part is like we don't have to like go and get clients. We have a huge list of clients that we could use and work with, and both products have users on them, and we're just getting feedback, seeing like, okay, what works on this product, the custom code side, and what works on the no-code side. Ultimately, the end goal is to end up with one product, but it might be a combination of both, right?
Yeah, why go after 2 products? They were just like, I think this could really work, and I think this could really work. Let's just try it. Just like how I'm going to hire 4 and only 3 are going to keep. Let's make 2 and only 1 is going to keep.
Yeah, it's really that. It's to see, not to zero yourself in, box yourself. Well, it's all towards the pursuit of the best product, right? Because he gives a lot of leniency to myself and the other team to build out the solutions how we see fit, just as long as it solves the problem.
Yeah.
And then he wants clients to use it and see what actually resonates with them and what works. Because we might think this is the right solution.
A/B testing, but just whole stack.
Exactly. Yeah, we're just A/B testing product level.
Yeah. Huh. That's an interesting.
It is. Yeah, it's definitely interesting because it's like I'll build a feature and then they'll build a feature. I'm like, dang, theirs is better. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, they nailed it. Like I thought mine was good, but dang, they did a much better job.
Well, talk about the speeds between the 2. All right. I don't think there's not many times where you literally have a no-code team and a full team or full code team. So let's get into a little bit of the comparisons of this here. Like, so I know it's probably not black and white. Okay? There's more differences than that, but you go and build a feature. What are we looking at?
Well, I'll give you a good example. A couple of months ago, we wanted to implement like in-app Loom recordings, because one of the things we preach is like, hey, if you're going to bring up an issue, I want you to record yourself talking through this issue rather than just putting words on paper. Like, I want you to type it out in this format. Like, here's the problem. Here's what you did to cause this problem and what you think the solution is. But I also want you to verbally say it, and I want to watch you say it, and I want to do it async, right?
Yeah.
So we want to implement Loom. And for me, that was just going to the plugin section, finding the Loom plugin and the API key and calling it a day. For the custom code team, they had to get the SDK. They had to figure out how to natively embed it, like all that stuff. And it took them much longer, right? Just because
How much
of
is
that,
much longer?
I was able to... I think it took them a week, where it took me 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Because the plugin exists. Somebody had $10 a month.
Yeah. You're borrowing someone else's week.
And there were 3 of them.
Yeah.
And there's one of you.
Well, I mean, they prioritize features, right? Whatever. But at the end of the day, that one person still had to figure out how to make it work and make it responsive, right? Like the video player has to fit the size dimensions and all that stuff. And it's like, for me, it's like, oh, the plugin's responsive. Cool.
Nice.
And does that actually work? Like, good? Is that functionality good?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. If you have the Chrome extension for Loom,
you
click a button in the app and it will start recording. And then it will just place the recording URL in the data table, and that's it.
Beautiful. So you just give the user the ability to enter their own API code or key, and you
No. They don't even have to enter an API code. I had to just enter an API code for the Loom.
Yeah.
The app, like you have to have like an app code or whatever so that you could have it in your website. But then afterwards, the person, as long as they're logged into Loom or they have the Loom extension, that's it.
They're using
wow.
And what about the other direction? When has code beaten you to the punch?
Or just
sure. One thing I'm trying to tackle right now is a rich text editor that functions the way I want it to function. And exactly. A lot of our thing is, so if you imagine every topic or action or issue has a comment section, has a description section. You want to be able to see what the other person's typing if you're having a live meeting and one person's taking notes, right? So obviously that just removes the bubble editors or the bubble's native rich text editor, because you can enable auto binding, but you have to refresh if the other person edits something while you're looking at it. So I've played with, the best one out is Rico's TipTap text editor, but he himself has had a lot of issues getting it to work with because of bubbles. And there's that you can connect to TipTap itself and do collaboration, which is cool. Like, that's what I'm using, but it's still not performative enough because TipTap is expecting a file when you are sending content back and forth, and it's really hard to send a file through the API in Bubble, right? Like it's like a encrypted file that you have to send to TipTap, especially if you want to create a file like a text field in advance of it being edited. And I haven't found a solution to that, right? And I'm sitting there like, hey guys, custom code team, can somebody help me? Like, can we just write this? Like I could use ChatGPT and I could use some of my JavaScript skills, but at the end of the day, this will take me 2 weeks. You guys already have an awesome text editor that works perfectly. How can I borrow this, right?
Yeah.
And that's just been the challenge now, is them prioritizing me. Yeah. And giving me their dev time. So that's where Bubble fails, right? Like,
but they could just wrap that up into a plugin for you, right? Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, they could, but it's like, and we've tried that before, and we were trying to, like, Rico made the TipTap editor for it, and it's free, so like he's done a lot of great work for free, right? But ultimately, it just comes down to like getting dev time to do it. Yeah. Right. Like, it's like I need a developer to understand the plugin functionality in Bubble, because it's not normal JavaScript. Not normal. Yeah, you have to have like a separate field for each action, and it's just mind-boggling how they made it so complex.
Yeah, that abstraction layer just makes a little bit more complexity. It's pretty tough.
But those are the intricacies, right? Like, there's some stuff that I can move really fast on, and then there's other stuff that I just come to a grinding halt just because of Bubble's limitations. Yeah. Right. And we'll see how it performs once we have way more clients, right? Like right now we have a couple of dozen users on it on a daily basis, and it works fine. But there's a lot of nested repeating groups that I had to implement in the app for it to do what it needs to do, right? And it works fine right now, but we'll see, right? Like, we'll see, because at some point I might have to refactor the whole thing.
Yeah, that's just software generally. Let me ask you a question though. Matt comes to you tomorrow and say, "Hey, I want to add another bubble dev to your team." What do you look for when hiring that bubble dev?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, and we've talked about this too. Where do we need to add another person? And the initial thought is it's much better to not add somebody and have a smaller team so that we move faster. Even if another person theoretically, like let's say I could clone myself and have that person work, but they've never worked in the app before, it still would take a lot of time to get them spun up into what we're building in the method and to get them on board, right? So in my scenario, I wouldn't advise for that. But in general, if I was looking for, I I had this really funny idea of trying to get them to solve the what's that mathematical concept where it's like a number that repeats itself and it's like becomes like a little seashell.
The
What's that thing called?
Fibonacci sequence.
The Fibonacci sequence. Yeah. Okay, David,
Damn you,
I'll quote
David.
with
You
that.
always know.
Yeah,
I knew as soon
I
as you
would
started
ask.
drawing the circle, I was like, I know where this is going.
Yeah, I would ask the dev to build a function like an API workflow in Bubble that will give me the nth number in a Fibonacci sequence. Because that right there, if they're a good backend developer, right? Anybody could really pick up.
I would just find a
if you can figure
library.
that out in backend.
I would just
Yeah.
So I tried it. I tried not could solve it. Like I tried for like an hour the other day, and I was like, "This is really hard."
All right.
So,
Outside of like a
just give up on it.
testing thing though, what are you looking
Yeah.
for? Like, give me like, all right, give me a pay range of like, hey Matt, we need to hire a developer. Here's what we should expect to pay, and here are the things that we're looking for.
Yeah, I would say between pay range wise, probably between 120 and 150K salary, full benefits, and all that stuff. And for a Bubble developer to meet that requirement, they obviously, and I would like to see some work just to see like what they've built, maybe not even just play around with it. And then I would also want to think about building applications, right? Like it's not just like, okay, sure, you can jump in there, put a group together and put an element in there, but how do you actually think about your app and performance wise? Like, do you just jump in and start building, or do you actually take time to think through what you need to build and how it will incorporate with the rest of the application, right? So it'll probably be some type of test to see if I'd say like, all right, let's say you have this type of app and you want to add this feature to it, right? How would you think about it? Not actually build it, but what would you spend the most of your time doing? Like, are you going to spend most of the time figuring out compatibility issues you might run into? Like there might be some duplications or redundancies, or are you just going to go straight and build? Like if you spend 90% of your time thinking and then you allocate 10% of your time to building and you don't even finish, I'll probably hire that person versus somebody who spends 10% time thinking and then 90% time building, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think outside of that, you also just skills of, can they communicate well? Can they plan well? Can they think ahead? Is that someone that you want to work with? Do they know how to work with, whatever your project management system is? Do they have experiences with live applications? Like that's a big thing for me. Like when looking at bubble devs, like a lot of folks have built apps, but not a lot of folks have actually managed a production app with users, especially thousands of users. And that's normally like where the most advantages come in, right? Like we need to know that we're building a production app that's scaling to 1,000 users, that you know how to handle that environment, that you know how to handle a DB or a migration in that kind of environment, that you know how to properly QA, bug test, and manage, staging for those live environments. So yeah, that's I think where there's all shortage, because there's a lot of people that can build apps but have never actually had an app that with hundreds or thousands of users, and they don't have that experience yet. So that's also really hard to come by.
It is, yeah. I think the pool of candidates for that is probably less than 50. Like just from my right, like of developers, or maybe there's way more and they're just very quiet. Like I think there's a whole world of bubble developers who's just very quiet.
Way more than that, but from our networks, around 50 sounds right.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I wish the success stories of no-code companies in general were more public about it. Of just, hey, here's what we're making, here's the revenue. Flutterflow recently came out with like their success page, and then they showed the apps and they're live and like how many users they got or how many revenue. And I thought that was tremendous, right? Like actually showing like, hey, this app has 600,000 users and it's built on Flutterflow. Like that's validation, right? Like I would love to see other no-code platforms continue to do that, because right now they kind of say like, oh, we had this company and raised this much money, dividend and all these others, but like what does that really tell us? Like it's a financing company, it's meant to raise a lot of money. I don't know, so
money, and people don't use the app very often.
So we need more success stories. We need people to be more public about it. I think as the industry continues to mature as well, obviously we'll get more. Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts before we wrap this up, Dave?
No, I think we're still early days. I'd love to see you get the no code app out into the world, and then all of these tech CEOs go, oh wow, no code can really build cool things. And now all of these tech CEOs are like, we need our no code team. And then we kind of roll that down the hill a little bit. That would be
Matt would
really
be a
cool.
good ambassador for that.
Yeah.
He would, have people at that level saying, hey, I have built this with this kind of technology. I also had a code team. They weren't able to do what this no code team did. And then I can go to these and get them involved. Like he'd be a great ambassador. I think you do have opportunity here, and just don't let us down, man.
No.
Everyone's relying on you.
Don't suck. No, yeah, absolutely. It's like there's a huge opportunity because a lot of the challenges, some of the just from osmosis of like interacting with them is like, hey, how do I get my dev team of 40 engineers aligned and building something correctly and just doing it together, right? And it's like, well, actually, if you had a smaller team of no-code devs, you could probably have a much easier process, right? There's opportunities for that, but then the challenge is there's not a lot of no-code developers that have worked on teams. So it's like you solve one problem and then you have to
and I think also limitations of technology too. No-code platforms are still limited in some ways, and depending on your use case, depending on what kind of tech you need. So I think all of that is still maturing, whereas code is, depending on the framework, it's already matured and it's already been tested, battle tested. There's a lot of, supply out there. And that was one of the employers I was talking to recently was like, listen, there's so much supply. I'd rather pay more, but know that I have a million to choose from rather than finding one of the 50 bubble devs that, and they don't even want to take my job because they have their own agency.
Yeah, that's fair.
It comes into it. But I think, it'll keep maturing. We'll keep getting more and more, and super bullish on the future for all of us.
Yeah. I think the one thing that Bubble just needs to is not driving away the top tier developers that are like evangelicals who really love Bubble and like
in the back.
Yeah. Right. It's like preaching to the choir here, but it's like, the people who really push Bubble to its limits and then quickly realize that Bubble is not going to help you get past those limits and you have to use custom code or you have to use a different, and then you lose that talent, right? Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of that, and it's like I see that in myself too. There's certain points I was like, do I really need to use Bubble for this? Right? Like at the end of the day, like, can I just offload majority of the stuff I'm running into just straight to Zeno or a different tool, or just maybe Supabase and call it a day, right? Versus trying to solve problems because of Bubble's inefficiencies.
Yeah,
that's a bigger conversation. Yeah, and I do unfortunately see a lot of the top talent going away, and that top talent took 4 or 5 years to mature, and now it's not available, and then it's gonna unfortunately cut the chances of finding success stories because that top talent is on other things now, and you need that top talent to add those success stories. So it is an unfortunate that we're kind of facing, especially with the competition of so many other good no-code platforms and players, and their capabilities and the speeds that they move. It's quite challenging. They're facing more competition than ever before, and it's hard to say who's going to win, quite frankly.
Yeah, time will tell.
We shall see.
All right. Well,
hopefully, don't go to waste.
I know 100% sure that will not be the case, because we could just do so many different things, and like once you learn a tool like Bubble, you have so many other tools so much easier, and like so I know for sure we're good, but where is the next tool that winner? I don't know. It could still be them. It could be someone else, but it could just be agnostic. It could be all of them. I think it's still too early to tell for anything like that.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, Beck, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks,
Always
guys.
a pleasure. Hopefully we can have you back in the future. Thanks for being here and for all that you do for the no-code ecosystem. And we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, guys. Good talking to y'all.
A gentleman, as always. Beck and I go way back. I mean, he was talking about when he was working as a sales agent. I forgot all this stuff. It went down like memory lane a little bit. One of the people in my community, probably like the first 100 members, maybe first 50 members, resonated a lot with him in the sense that we were both entrepreneurs trying to, build kind of this marketplace, learning Bubble kind of thing. So, like my takeaway from that is like, form a community, like find friends. Like it makes this journey
Yeah.
so much more fun and enjoyable to like do this alongside other people. Like we all ended up in our own ways, but we got there together and we all helped each
Mhm.
other. Like he's helped me in a ton of different ways. I've helped him as well. And that's kind of what it's about in any
Yeah.
industry. It's like you need to form these relationships. While we weren't able to work together on that last thing, who knows what it has in the future for us. But either we could still help each other and still have fun with each other. So yeah, always great talking to back and
Yeah.
and getting to collab with you on this podcast, David.
Yeah, it's been nice. I remember just like as he was talking about the early days, I was just reminiscing about the early forum and how it was just like so collaborative and everyone was happy and excited and we were okay that there were so many bugs. We always found the workaround and there was someone there to help. Um and it
Why do you
just
think that
I'm not
was?
on the
Because
forum anymore.
that's true. That's true. Like that was totally a thing. I remember that. But why do you think we were just so willing to put all aside the deficiencies? Because why was that one reason? I think I know the answer, but I want you to answer
I
first.
don't know. My thought, I think it was early and we were fighting a common enemy, which was code and needing to find a technical founder. And I think like the really early adopters of Bubble knew they were early adopters. And they're
Yeah,
like, I'm a huge fanboy of Bubble and I want to go help other people learn. Right? Like how when was I wonder what Nigel's first forum post was. Like he was
yeah,
always
he's
there
an
and
OG.
Keith and like these really really early folks.
Yeah,
Tara Reid was all over the forum. And there was a lot of stuff that they saw the vision and where it was going, but because it was so early, it was such a small team, we gave them latitude and we're like, look, it's not always going to work, but I can get further than I ever could before.
yeah.
And I think a lot of the pro developers now grew up on the forum and then stopped monitoring the forum. Like me, I don't go to the forum ever. I read
There's little
one monthly
value in
post.
it, right? We
Yeah,
have no
and there
reason
was
to.
so much. I want to hire you. Can you hire me? I'm available for work. It was like a weird classified section, and it just was like I was so disgruntled going through it,
Yeah,
and I just like kind of stopped contributing. Although used to be super vocal,
yeah,
and then there was so many answers already there. You didn't need to ask the question because someone has already asked
yeah.
and it was already there. And then, it kind of just it felt, I mean, I'm not on it every day, and so I'm not really looking and I'm not answering. But there's no real incentive. I don't know. I just didn't feel like it
There's no
was
incentive.
yeah.
Especially for people at our level where it's like we used to also go there to just learn stuff. But now that we don't need to go there to learn stuff, we also don't go there at all. So we don't help as well. And there's no
Yeah.
reason to help too. In
There's
in
no
that
like
sense, like,
karma points that's worth
yeah,
it.
you
You're
don't
not
get a free subscription or anything. There's no
yeah.
acknowledgement in that way. So we help each other in our own ways. But my reason why I think is like in the beginning, Bubble was so far ahead of everyone else, so there
Mhm.
was like very little options. And then two, we were desperate, like all as entrepreneurs that finally figured out a way that we could bring our business to life.
Mhm.
And we were actually doing it, and so we were just desperate of just like, this is a solution, it's actually doing it. It's not perfect, but there's enough ways that you can do a workaround to get there, and we're all kind of in it together. So I feel like it was that entrepreneurial desperation and magic of being able to do this for the first time that had us captivated for a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, and I was building a company at the time, so I wasn't looking to make money off of
Yeah, me
knowing
too.
Bubble directly. And then
Me
I think
too.
it changed, and lots of freelancers, and there was a turning point where it felt like everyone was selling something, and I'm not
Yeah,
here to pay you to do this. I'll spend the time, but if someone knew how, maybe I could save some time.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, another episode of This Week in No Code in the books.
yeah,
Another great one. A lot of no code nuggets, wisdom shared. We have another one exciting planned for you next week, but you're going to have to tune in for that. But
Mhm.
otherwise, David, that's it for This Week in No Code. And
We'll see you next week in No Code.
see you guys. Thanks for
See
tuning in.
y'all.